Missing a flight feels stressful, but honestly, not understanding what people are saying around you in another country can feel even worse. You look at the screen, you hear an announcement, people suddenly start moving, and for a few seconds, your brain goes completely blank. Wait, what's happening? Hello, my best students, and welcome again to your channel Native Flow. Today, we're going to talk about something very real: how English can make traveling feel calmer, easier, and far less stressful. Because most people think English is only useful for school, exams, or work. But the moment you travel, you suddenly understand something important. English becomes survival. Not dramatic survival, but everyday survival. Ordering food, asking for directions, understanding airport announcements, talking to hotel staff, explaining problems, reading signs. Even small things become easier when you understand the language around you. And the opposite is also true. When you don't understand anything, simple situations suddenly feel exhausting. Now, here's something interesting. Many travel problems are not actually travel problems. They are communication problems. You missed the train because you misunderstood the platform number. You ordered the wrong food because you couldn't explain yourself clearly. You felt nervous asking for help because you were afraid of speaking. So in this video, we are not only talking about vocabulary, we are talking about freedom, the kind of freedom that comes from understanding people and being understood by them. And honestly, once learners experience this feeling while traveling, their motivation to learn English changes completely. It becomes real, because now the language is connected to real life, real movement, real people, real situations. Now imagine arriving at an airport after a long flight. You are tired, maybe stressed. You hear fast announcements in English around you. People are walking quickly, signs everywhere. And suddenly, you realize something important. If you understand English even a little, everything becomes calmer. You can follow instructions, you can ask questions, you can solve small problems before they become big ones. And this changes your emotional experience completely, because stress often comes from uncertainty, not knowing where to go, not knowing what people mean, not knowing what to do next. But language reduces uncertainty. That's why English feels powerful during travel. Not because it makes you impressive, but because it makes you capable. Now let's talk about confidence. Many English learners imagine fluency as something connected to big conversations or professional speaking. But one of the most satisfying moments is actually much simpler. The first time you successfully handle a real travel situation alone. Maybe you ask for directions correctly, maybe you check into a hotel smoothly, maybe you solve a small problem at the airport without panic. Those moments feel incredibly rewarding because you suddenly realize, my English is useful. And useful English feels very different from classroom English. Now here's another thing many learners discover while traveling. People usually appreciate effort more than perfection. You do not need perfect grammar to communicate while traveling. You just need calmness, clarity, and courage. For example, imagine your luggage does not arrive. You walk to the airport desk. Your English is not perfect, but you say, "Excuse me, I think my bag is missing." Simple, clear, human. And now communication begins. This is why travel can actually improve your English very quickly, because the situations are real. Your brain becomes more alert, more focused. You remember phrases better because they are connected to emotion and experience. Now think about something else. Traveling without English often creates emotional isolation. You are surrounded by people, but disconnected from them. You cannot fully ask questions. You cannot fully express yourself. And after some time, this becomes mentally tiring. But when you know English, even at an intermediate level, the world starts feeling more open. You become more independent. You stop relying on others for every small thing. And independence creates confidence. Now let's imagine another situation. You are sitting in a cafe in another country. Someone starts a small conversation with you, maybe about travel, maybe about food, maybe about where you are from. Without English, that moment disappears immediately. But with English, a completely new experience becomes possible. And honestly, some of the best travel memories begin with simple conversations like these. This is another reason English changes travel so much. It transforms places from locations into human experiences. Now, here's something important. Do not wait until your English becomes perfect before traveling or speaking. Many learners think, one day when my English is fluent, then I'll feel confident. But confidence often comes first, not perfection. The more you use your English in real situations, the more natural it becomes. And travel forces you to use it, not in a stressful academic way, but in a practical, human way. Now let's talk about listening. Travel English is different from textbook listening. At airports, stations, hotels, restaurants, people speak naturally, sometimes fast, sometimes with accents. And at first, this can feel overwhelming. But over time, your ears adapt. You stop trying to understand every single word. You begin focusing on meaning instead. And this is one of the biggest turning points in language learning. Because real communication is not about understanding perfectly. It is about understanding enough to continue confidently. Now imagine yourself 6 months or 1 year from now. You travel somewhere new. You enter the airport calmly. You understand the signs. You ask questions naturally. You order food comfortably. You handle small problems without panic. That feeling is not only about travel anymore, it is about growth. You realize that English gave you something bigger than vocabulary. It gave you freedom, freedom to move, freedom to connect, freedom to experience the world more deeply. And honestly, that is one of the most beautiful reasons to learn a language. Would you like me to continue with the next section? There is a very specific kind of stress that happens while traveling. It's the stress of not understanding what is happening around you. And honestly, airports are one of the biggest examples of that. Hello again, my best students. And let's continue. Airports are strange places. Everything moves quickly. People are rushing. Announcements are constantly playing in the background. Screens change every minute, and everyone looks like they already know exactly where they are going. Meanwhile, if you are nervous or confused, even simple things can suddenly feel difficult. Finding the correct gate, understanding boarding times, checking luggage, going through security, even hearing your flight number announced can feel stressful when English is not comfortable for you yet. Now imagine this situation. You are standing in front of the departure screen. Your flight has changed gates. You hear an announcement in English. At first, your brain panics, but then you understand a few important words. Flight, gate, changed. And suddenly, you know what is happening. That small moment changes your emotional state immediately, because confusion creates stress, but understanding creates calmness. Now, here is something interesting. Native speakers do not understand every single word perfectly in airports either. Even they sometimes ask, "Sorry, what did they say?" Or, "Which gate was it again?" So do not put unrealistic pressure on yourself. Real communication is not about perfect understanding. It is about understanding enough to continue moving forward. Now let's move to another travel situation that many people fear: talking to airport staff. This can feel intimidating because the conversation feels important. Maybe there is a problem with your luggage. Maybe your ticket has an issue. Maybe you missed your flight. In these moments, people often panic because they think, my English is not good enough. But remember something very important. Clarity matters more than complexity. Simple English spoken calmly is usually enough. For example, I think there is a problem with my ticket. My luggage didn't arrive. Can you help me, please? These sentences are simple, but they work. And when you communicate calmly, people usually become more patient and helpful too. Now let's talk about hotels. Hotels are another place where English changes everything emotionally. Imagine arriving after a long journey. You are tired. You just want to rest. But suddenly there is a problem with your reservation. Maybe the room is unavailable. Maybe the booking information is incorrect. If you cannot communicate, stress grows very quickly. But if you can explain yourself simply, the situation becomes manageable. You can say, I booked a room for tonight. I think there is a mistake. Can we check again? Again, simple English, but powerful. And honestly, most hotel conversations are repetitive. The same expressions appear again and again. Checking in, asking for Wi-Fi, requesting towels, finding breakfast times. Travel English becomes easier because many situations repeat themselves, and repetition builds confidence. Now let's move outside the hotel. Transportation. This is another area where communication reduces stress immediately. Imagine trying to take a taxi in a country you do not know well. You are tired. Maybe it is late at night, and you are unsure if the driver understands you. Now compare two situations. In the first situation, you cannot explain where you need to go clearly. In the second situation, you calmly say, "Can you take me here, please? How long will it take? Can I pay by card?" The second situation feels completely different emotionally, not because the world changed, but because your ability to communicate changed, and communication creates security. Now let's talk about getting lost, because almost every traveler experiences this at some point. You miss a train, you take the wrong bus, you walk in the wrong direction, and suddenly you realize, I have no idea where I am. This is where many people freeze emotionally. But English gives you a tool. You can ask for help. You can approach someone and say, "Excuse me, I think I'm lost. Can you help me find this place? Which direction should I go?" And something beautiful often happens in these moments. People help you, sometimes very warmly. Sometimes they even walk with you or explain carefully. And these small human interactions become part of the travel experience itself. Now, here's another important thing. Traveling with English does not only help you solve problems, it helps you enjoy moments more deeply. Ordering food becomes easier. Meeting people becomes easier. Understanding signs becomes easier. Even simple things like buying coffee feel smoother. And when daily actions become smoother, your brain relaxes. That relaxation changes the entire feeling of travel. Now imagine sitting in a train station in another country. Without English, you may feel disconnected from everything around you. But with English, even basic English, the environment becomes more understandable. You recognize words, you follow instructions, you understand small conversations nearby, and slowly, the place starts feeling less foreign. Now let's connect this back to learning again. One reason travel improves English so quickly is emotional memory. When a situation is emotional, your brain remembers language more strongly. If you ask for directions during a stressful moment and someone helps you successfully, your brain remembers those phrases deeply. That is why real-life English often stays in memory longer than textbook English, because emotion strengthens learning. Now let's go deeper into confidence again. Travel confidence is not about knowing every word. It is about trusting yourself enough to communicate imperfectly. Sometimes your sentence will not be perfect. Sometimes your pronunciation will not be perfect. That's normal. Most people around the world are used to hearing imperfect English. What matters is your willingness to communicate. And the more you practice that willingness, the more confident you become. Now think about the emotional difference between these two travelers. The first traveler avoids speaking completely because they fear mistakes. The second traveler speaks simply, asks questions, smiles, and tries. Which traveler grows faster? Which traveler enjoys the trip more? Usually the second one. Because fear creates isolation, but communication creates experience. And honestly, experience is the heart of travel. Not only seeing places, but interacting with people, understanding cultures, feeling connected to the world around you. And English helps make that possible. One of the most beautiful things about traveling is this. Sometimes a conversation with a stranger can stay in your memory longer than the place itself. Hello again, my amazing students, and let's continue this journey together. When people imagine travel, they often think about famous places, big cities, beautiful beaches, historic buildings. And yes, those things matter. But very often, the most unforgettable moments happen between people. A short conversation in a cafe, a friendly stranger helping you in the street, a traveler from another country sharing a story with you on a train. These moments feel small while they happen, but later you realize they became part of your experience forever. And English is often the bridge that makes these moments possible. Because English is not only a language for airports and hotels, it is a language of connection between people from completely different parts of the world. Imagine this situation. You are sitting in a hostel or cafe during your trip. Someone near you hears your accent and asks, "Where are you from?" A very simple question. But sometimes that small question opens the door to an entire evening of conversation. You begin talking. You exchange stories. You learn about another culture. Maybe you even become friends. And suddenly, the world feels smaller and more connected. Now think about the opposite situation. You want to speak, but fear stops you. You stay silent. You avoid eye contact. And many opportunities quietly disappear without you noticing. This is why communication changes travel so deeply. Because communication creates possibilities. Now, here's something interesting. When people travel, they often become more open emotionally. Maybe because everyone is outside their comfort zone. Maybe because travel makes people curious. Or maybe because being far from home changes the way humans connect with each other. Whatever the reason is, conversations while traveling often feel more natural and memorable. And English becomes the tool that allows those conversations to happen. Now let's talk about confidence again. But from a deeper perspective. At first, speaking English while traveling may feel uncomfortable. You worry about mistakes. You worry about pronunciation. You worry about understanding people. But then something surprising happens. You survive the conversation, maybe imperfectly, maybe awkwardly, but you survive it. And after several moments like this, your brain slowly changes. You begin realizing, I can actually do this. That realization is powerful because confidence does not appear before action. Confidence appears after repeated experience. Now imagine asking for directions successfully in another country for the first time. It may seem like a small moment, but emotionally it feels huge. Because your brain suddenly understands something. English is no longer just something you study. It has become something you use to navigate real life, and that changes your relationship with the language completely. Now let's go deeper into cultural experiences. Travel teaches you something very important. People around the world are different, but also very similar. Different foods, different traditions, different ways of speaking. But emotionally, People often want the same things: respect, kindness, connection. And when you communicate in English with people from different countries, you begin noticing these similarities more clearly. This is one reason travel changes many people emotionally. It expands the way they see the world, and language is a huge part of that expansion. Now think about how many experiences become possible through communication. Joining a group tour, talking with local people, asking someone for recommendations, learning hidden places tourists usually miss. Even simple moments like laughing during a conversation with another traveler become meaningful memories. Without communication, travel can sometimes feel like observation. You see things, but you remain emotionally distant. With communication, travel becomes participation. You become part of the environment instead of only watching it. Now, here's something important. You do not need advanced English to create meaningful travel experiences. Many learners imagine that travelers speak perfect English everywhere. That is not true at all. Most international communication uses simple English, clear English, slow English, human English. And honestly, kindness often matters more than grammar. A friendly attitude, calm energy, and willingness to communicate usually help conversations flow naturally. Now let's imagine another situation. You are traveling alone. At first, you feel nervous, but slowly, because of English, you begin talking to people more often. You ask questions, you start conversations, you interact with strangers naturally. And over time, something surprising happens. Your personality begins expanding. You become more confident, more independent, more socially comfortable, not only in English, but in life. This is another hidden gift of language learning. It changes more than vocabulary. It changes identity. Now let's talk about fear for a moment. Many people delay traveling because they are afraid of communication problems. And honestly, that fear is understandable. Travel already pushes you outside your comfort zone, but every time you successfully communicate in a new environment, your comfort zone grows a little larger. And slowly, situations that once felt stressful begin feeling normal. That growth becomes addictive in a beautiful way. Because once you realize you can survive uncertainty, you stop fearing it as much. Now think about the emotional difference between these two travelers again. One traveler avoids speaking because they fear mistakes. The other traveler communicates imperfectly but openly. The second traveler usually collects more stories, more friendships, more confidence, more unforgettable moments. Not because their English is perfect, but because they allow communication to happen. And honestly, that is the real purpose of language, not perfection, connection. Now let's bring this back to your English journey one more time. Every listening practice, every conversation, every small phrase you learn may one day become part of a real experience somewhere in the world. Maybe at an airport, maybe in a cafe, maybe during a random conversation with someone you never expected to meet. And that is what makes learning English feel exciting. Because you are not only learning words, you are preparing yourself for moments you have not lived yet. And some of those moments may change you forever. There is a kind of fear that many travelers never talk about openly. It is not fear of airplanes, not fear of hotels, not even fear of getting lost. It is the fear of not being able to handle a situation when something goes wrong. Hello again, my best students. And let's continue. Because honestly, travel is unpredictable. Sometimes everything goes perfectly, and sometimes nothing goes as planned. Flights get delayed, phones stop working, reservations disappear. You take the wrong train, you lose your luggage, and in those moments, stress grows very quickly. But something interesting happens when you know English. The situation may still be difficult, but emotionally, you feel less trapped Because language gives you options. It gives you a way to ask questions, a way to explain your problem, a way to search for solutions instead of freezing emotionally. Now imagine this situation. Your flight gets canceled late at night. Everyone around you suddenly starts moving quickly. People are asking questions at the desk. Others are calling hotels. The airport becomes loud and chaotic. If you understand nothing, your brain immediately goes into panic mode. But if you can understand even part of the situation, your stress decreases. You hear words like delayed, canceled, tomorrow morning, hotel voucher. Suddenly, your mind starts organizing the situation instead of fearing it. That is one of the hidden powers of language. Understanding creates emotional stability. Now, here's something important. Calm communication often solves problems faster than perfect communication. When people panic, their English usually becomes worse. Their thoughts become disorganized. Their confidence disappears. But when you stay calm, even simple English becomes effective. For example, my flight was canceled. What should I do now? Simple, clear, effective. Or, I need help finding my hotel. Again, very simple, but enough to move forward. And honestly, this is one of the biggest travel skills anyone can develop: the ability to stay emotionally calm while solving problems. Now let's talk about overthinking. Many learners overthink English while traveling. They prepare perfect sentences in their minds before speaking, but real travel situations move quickly. You often do not have time to create perfect grammar. You need communication that is clear and immediate. And this is why confidence matters more than perfection again, because communication is action, not performance. Now imagine asking someone for help. If your sentence is not perfect, but your message is understandable, most people will still help you, especially while traveling. People usually recognize when someone is trying sincerely, and kindness exists everywhere in the world. Now let's go deeper into another emotional part of travel: loneliness. Travel can sometimes feel lonely, especially in unfamiliar places. You are far from home, far from familiar routines. Sometimes you even miss hearing your own language, but communication helps reduce that loneliness. A short conversation in English can suddenly make a place feel less cold emotionally. Even small interactions matter: talking to a cashier, asking someone for directions, speaking with another traveler. These moments remind your brain, you are not alone here. And humans emotionally need that feeling. Now think about how powerful this becomes over time. The more you communicate successfully while traveling, the more your brain starts associating English with freedom instead of fear. This is a huge transformation because many learners initially associate English with exams, mistakes, pressure, and correction. But travel changes that relationship. Now, English becomes movement, experience, adventure, human connection, and emotionally, that changes motivation completely. Now, let's imagine another difficult situation. You are sick while traveling. You need medicine, or help, or information. At that moment, English stops feeling like a school subject completely. It becomes something practical and deeply human. You may need to say, I don't feel well. Where is the pharmacy? I need a doctor. Simple phrases, but incredibly important. And knowing them creates emotional security, because fear becomes stronger when you feel helpless. Communication reduces helplessness. Now, here's another beautiful thing about English during travel. It teaches adaptability. You begin learning how to explain ideas differently, how to simplify your words, how to communicate even when vocabulary is missing. These are real communication skills, and honestly, native speakers do this too, even in their own language. Good communicators know how to adjust naturally, depending on the situation. Now, let's talk about emotional freedom. This may be one of the deepest benefits of learning English for travel. When communication becomes easier, your mind becomes lighter. You stop constantly worrying about basic survival situations. And because of that, you begin enjoying the present moment more deeply. The street feels more beautiful, the cafe feels more relaxing, the city feels more exciting, because your brain is no longer trapped in survival stress. It has space for curiosity again. And curiosity is what makes travel magical. Now think about the opposite experience. A traveler who is constantly afraid of misunderstanding, afraid of asking questions, afraid of mistakes. That fear slowly limits the trip emotionally. The world begins feeling smaller instead of bigger, but communication expands the world again. And honestly, that may be one of the most beautiful reasons to learn English. Not only for work, not only for school, but for freedom. The freedom to move through the world with more confidence, more calmness, and more connection. Now let's bring everything together. English does not remove every travel problem, but it changes the way you experience those problems emotionally. It gives you tools, options, possibilities, and most importantly, it gives you the confidence to interact with the world instead of hiding from it. And maybe that is what travel is really about in the end, not escaping life, but becoming more open to it.